Something happened on a frozen December afternoon in Denver, Colorado that shook the entire National Football League to its core, and the reverberations of that single non-contact moment when a man's knee buckled on artificial turf and a season's worth of championship dreams collapsed with it are still being felt today. Micah Parsons, the most dominant defensive player of his generation, the man who the Dallas Cowboys traded away in the most controversial transaction in franchise history, and who then turned Green Bay into a genuine Super Bowl contender the very moment he arrived, went down clutching his knee in Week 15, and suddenly everything that everyone thought they knew about who had won the trade and who had lost it became infinitely more complicated. Meanwhile, in Frisco, Texas, the Cowboys' 2025 rookie class was quietly doing something remarkable, and the building blocks of a 2026 Super Bowl push were being laid, imperfect, expensive, and loaded with the kind of urgency that only comes when a franchise knows its championship window is open right now and cannot afford to wait another single season. Everything is connected. Every move traces back to one blockbuster trade, and the story of Micah Parsons dominating while the Cowboys try to move forward without him is one of the most dramatic and emotionally complex storylines in professional football right now. Let's go all the way inside it. The trade that sent Micah Parsons to Green Bay was not just a roster transaction, it was a rupture, a breaking point reached after months of contract drama so toxic, so public, and so damaging to the relationship between Parsons and the Cowboys front office that by the time the deal was finally made official on August 28, 2025, most people close to the situation understood that there was no going back. Not now, not ever. Parsons had been involved in a very public contract standoff with the Cowboys that was chock full of drama. Jerry Jones attempted to negotiate the historic extension outside the presence of Parsons' agent, and the Cowboys brass rubbed Parsons' camp the wrong way with several comments, including Jones lamenting the fact that Parsons missed games in 2024, and Stephen Jones saying that Parsons has to want to be paid. CBSSports.com. Think about that for a moment. The best defensive player in the NFL, a man who had produced at least 12 sacks in every single one of his 4 professional seasons, was being told by his own team's front office that he needed to want to be paid. It was tone deaf, it was damaging, and it led directly to the moment that Cowboys fans are still struggling to process. Parsons requested a trade, and the Cowboys granted it. The Green Bay Packers agreed to the blockbuster trade on the evening of August 28, 2025, acquiring 3-time All-Pro defensive lineman Micah Parsons from Dallas in exchange for 2 first-round picks, one in 2026 and one in 2027, plus defensive tackle Kenny Clark. Green Bay Packers. The price was staggering. Parsons had recorded 256 tackles, 112 quarterback hits, and 52.5 sacks across 63 games in his first 4 NFL seasons. He had forced 9 fumbles. He was the first defensive player to be named to the Pro Bowl in each of his first 4 seasons since Aaron Donald. He and Reggie White were the only players in NFL history since 1982 to record at least 12 sacks in each of their first 4 seasons. Green Bay Packers. 2 first-round picks and a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. For a player of that caliber, with that kind of resume entering his prime at just 26 years old, some argued it wasn't enough. The Packers knew exactly what they were getting, and Green Bay gave him the contract extension he'd been waiting for, a 4-year, $188 million deal, ensuring he would be a member of the franchise through the 2029 season. CBSSports.com. The moment Parsons arrived at Lambeau Field, everything changed. The Packers went from a team with a talented young roster waiting for a defining piece to a legitimate Super Bowl contender overnight. Even in his debut, coming off a back injury that had limited him throughout the preseason, Parsons immediately impacted the game, creating pressure on his very first snap, leading a rush that caused a red zone interception by Jared Goff, and playing 29 of 65 defensive snaps, despite not being expected to play nearly that many. NFL. His teammates embraced him immediately. Parsons said after his debut, "These guys embraced me. They believe in my talents. They believed in me. And I'm just going to give these guys everything I have because I know what's at stake and I know what they gave up for me to be here. And I'm going to do what it takes for us to win." NFL. Over the next 13 weeks, Micah Parsons proceeded to put on one of the most dominant individual defensive performances of the 2025 NFL season. Week after week, he was everywhere, blowing up running plays before they could develop, splitting double teams that no other player in the league could handle on their own, chasing quarterbacks into collapsing pockets, and finishing sacks with the kind of relentless, explosive speed that made offensive coordinators lose sleep every time they drew up a game plan against Green Bay. On October 19th against the Arizona Cardinals, Parsons posted a career-high 3 sacks in a single game, a performance that showcased all dimensions of his pass-rushing ability, from the pure speed rushes that turned NFL tackles into embarrassed spectators, to the bull rush power moves that buried guards and centers backward into their own quarterback. Sports Illustrated. The Thanksgiving game against the Detroit Lions was perhaps the most iconic performance of Parsons' first Green Bay season. The Packers won 31-24, and Parsons was the decisive force, recording 2.5 sacks in the game to bring his season total to 12.5, becoming the only player in NFL history to begin his career with 5 consecutive seasons of at least 12 sacks, breaking the barrier that had been shared only with the legendary Reggie White. Sports Illustrated. He became the first and only player ever to accomplish that feat. Think about who Reggie White was, considered by many the greatest defensive player in NFL history, the Minister of Defense, a Hall of Famer whose name defines the standard for pass-rushing excellence across every era of the game. Micah Parsons, at 26 years old, is already in a conversation that includes Reggie White. The numbers demand it. The history demands it. On the biggest defensive play of the game, with Green Bay up 31-21 and the Lions driving, Parsons roared around veteran left tackle Taylor Decker, a very good NFL offensive tackle, and clobbered Jared Goff from behind for a loss of 8 yards, sealing the victory in a moment that felt scripted by the football gods themselves. Sports Illustrated. By the end of his 14-game regular season in Green Bay, Parsons had delivered elite pass-rushing production, played better run defense than his critics had argued he would, led with a vocal and passionate presence in the locker room, and earned his first-team All-Pro selection as a Packer. Sports Illustrated. The trade looked, to anyone with eyes, like a complete and total victory for Green Bay. 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark for a first-team All-Pro pass rusher in his prime? The Packers were winning that trade in a rout. And then, in Denver, on December 14, 2025, it all stopped. In the third quarter of Green Bay's 34-26 loss to the Broncos in Week 15, Parsons went down with a non-contact injury while pursuing quarterback Bo Nix, clutching his left knee immediately as he hit the turf. The entire Packers sideline seemed to hold its breath. Players who had watched Parsons dominate every opponent for 14 straight weeks could see from the way he went down, from the way he stayed on the ground, from the look on his face, that this was not a minor injury. The medical staff's response confirmed every worst fear. An MRI on Monday confirmed that Parsons had suffered a torn ACL in his left knee, an injury that would end his season immediately and threaten his availability for the start of the 2026 season. Yahoo Sports. The message went viral instantly. Support poured in from players, coaches, fans, and even people with no connection to football at all, because something about the combination of extraordinary athletic talent and genuine human vulnerability, publicly acknowledged and publicly processed, moves people in ways that touchdowns and statistics alone never can.
Even Jerry Jones, the man who traded Parsons, the man who presided over the contract drama that made the trade inevitable, the man who has to live with the reality that his decision to let this generational talent leave Dallas is now one of the most scrutinized moves of his long ownership career, expressed genuine sadness. "I'm sad for Micah. That's quite a challenge. I wish him the very best on his recovery." CBSSports.com. Whether those words reflected genuine feeling or strategic public relations, the fact that Jones felt compelled to say them at all speaks to the impossible situation the Cowboys find themselves in. A world where their former star is making history in Green Bay, getting hurt in Green Bay, recovering from that hurt for Green Bay, and will be back in Green Bay trying to win the Super Bowl that Dallas couldn't win when they had him. The Packers ultimately secured a playoff berth, but fell short in the NFC wildcard round against the Chicago Bears, losing 31-27 in a thrilling comeback victory for Caleb Williams and company. Without Parsons in the fold, Green Bay's defense lacked its most explosive element in the highest-stakes moments of the season, yard barker. The trade assessment, who won, who lost, was it fair, was it worth it, is now permanently complicated by that injury and that playoff exit. You cannot call the Packers losers of the trade when Parsons was first-team All-Pro in his one full season there. You cannot call the Cowboys winners when their defense gave up 30.1 points per game without him. The recovery is moving fast, faster than anyone expected. Parsons reported that the feedback he received over the first weeks since his surgery was that he was flying through rehab, with his eyes on a return to the field in the first quarter of 2026. Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley set a breathtaking target for Parsons upon his return, predicting that he would come back even better and potentially break the NFL single-season sack record of 23 sacks set by Myles Garrett in 2025. CBSSports.com. 23 sacks in a season, the sack record, for a man coming off a torn ACL? That is the level of belief that the Green Bay Packers have in Micah Parsons' ability to transcend normal human physical limitations. The latest reports indicate Parsons is expected to miss the first 3 to 4 games of the 2026 season, Pro Football Reference, which means that by Week 5 or Week 6, the most dangerous pass rusher on the planet could be back on the field, healthy, motivated, and playing with the kind of chip on his shoulder that only comes from sitting out for months while watching your team fight without you. For the Cowboys, for the franchise that made the decision to trade him, that now holds his 2 first-round picks, the 2026 pick at number 20 overall, born directly from the Parsons trade, and that is now trying to build a championship defense in his absence, the story of Micah Parsons' dominance in Green Bay is the story they cannot escape. It follows them everywhere. Into every draft room conversation, into every defensive free agency negotiation, into every press conference where Jerry Jones or Brian Schottenheimer is asked about the state of the Cowboys' pass rush and has to explain why a unit that gave up 30.1 points per game thinks it can compete with the best offenses in the NFC. But here is where the Cowboys story takes its own genuinely compelling turn. Because while Parsons was dominating in Green Bay, while the national narrative was focused on the trade and what Dallas had lost, something was happening inside the star in Frisco that deserves its own recognition. The 2025 rookie class was growing up, and the Cowboys' path back to championship contention was being quietly, steadily, and in some cases brilliantly constructed by a group of young players who arrived without the fanfare of a Micah Parsons, but who showed up every single week and gave everything they had for a team that desperately needed them. The centerpiece of the 2025 rookie class was Tyler Booker, the offensive guard out of Alabama that the Cowboys selected in the first round as a direct replacement for the legendary Zach Martin, one of the greatest guards in Cowboys history and a future Hall of Famer who retired after the 2024 season. Some questioned the pick, taking an offensive guard in the first round when the Cowboys had so many needs elsewhere. Pass rusher, cornerback, safety, felt to many fans like a misuse of a premium selection. Those fans were wrong. Booker quickly proved he was worthy of his selection. He had a difficult job in replacing future Hall of Famer Zach Martin, but was up to the task and was named to the All-Rookie team by the Pro Football Writers of America, ESPN. Week after week, on both run blocks and pass protection, the Alabama product delivered the kind of consistent, physical, technically refined play that makes an offensive line work. He was voted the Cowboys' Rookie of the Year, edging out second-round pick Donovan Ezeiruaku for the honor, with analysts praising his ability to solidify the left guard position and prove he could be dominant as both a run blocker and a pass protector. Yahoo Sports.
The run game reflected his impact directly. On Christmas Day against Washington, Booker played all 92 offensive snaps and earned a 74.6 overall grade, one of the better marks on the Cowboys' offense, as the run game piled up 211 rushing yards, and the Cowboys repeatedly gashed the middle of the Commanders' defense through the combination of Booker and fellow guard Cooper Beebe, creating dominant interior double teams. Blogging the boys. 211 rushing yards against an NFL defense in a game that Dallas won 30-23. That is not a coincidence. That is Tyler Booker doing exactly what a first-round offensive guard is supposed to do, opening holes, protecting the quarterback, and giving the offense a physical identity that makes every other skill position player's job easier. The Cowboys believe he will be a fixture in their offensive line for years to come, ESPN. And based on everything the 2025 season showed, that belief is not only justified, but perhaps understated. Donovan Ezeiruaku, the second-round pick from Boston College who arrived in Frisco while still recovering from a torn ACL, became the Cowboys' most exciting young defensive player of 2025 and the clearest answer to the question of who would carry the pass-rushing mantle in the post-Parsons era on Dallas's side of the trade. He played 604 snaps as a rookie, second most on the defensive line, and was credited with 45 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 42 pressures, and a forced fumble while playing over 54% of the snaps, a workload that increased steadily as the season progressed and the coaching staff grew more comfortable giving him more responsibility. ESPN. The pressure numbers, 42 quarterback pressures as a rookie, are genuinely impressive. Not sexy, not sack total headline grabbing, but consistent, reliable, week in and week out disruption of opposing passing games that reflects a player learning how to play the position at the NFL level and making real progress in that process. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer, who was rarely lavish with praise for young players during his first season leading the Cowboys, said on more than one occasion that he believes Ezeiruaku is destined to be a star. ESPN. Destined to be a star, from a head coach who has seen enough of professional football to know the difference between a player who shows flashes and a player who has the foundation to build something genuinely special. The Cowboys have drawn the comparison to DeMarcus Lawrence, a second-round pick in 2014 who recorded no regular season sacks in his rookie year before exploding with 8 sacks in year 2. They are hoping for that kind of jump from Ezeiruaku in 2026, ESPN. But there is one significant obstacle standing between Ezeiruaku and the full emergence that Dallas and their fans are counting on. Ezeiruaku underwent surgery on his hip labrum and is expected to miss most of the spring off-season program, Dallas Cowboys.
The hip labrum, a delicate, important joint structure that is absolutely critical for an edge rusher whose entire game is built on explosive get-off, change of direction, and the kind of sudden burst of speed that turns NFL offensive tackles into helpless bystanders. The surgery is concerning, the timeline is uncertain, and the Cowboys, who are already carrying risk at the edge rusher position, with Rashawn Gary being 28 years old and far from elite, need Eziraku healthy, developed, and ready to dominate when the 2026 season begins. Beyond Booker and Eziraku, the 2025 rookie class delivered contributions across multiple positions. Ryan Flauner, who was not even on the initial 53-man roster, activated in September after making the practice squad, emerged as the Cowboys' WR3 behind CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, hauling in 40 catches for 575 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Yahoo Sports. For a player who barely made the team, those numbers represent a remarkable journey and a genuine contribution to an offense that had enough elite talent at the top that a young, developing receiver could find real opportunities when the double teams and bracket coverages went toward Lamb and Pickens. Cornerback Siobhan Revel Jr. fought through a difficult rookie year hampered by his return from an ACL injury, seeing his first extended NFL snaps later in the season and showing the kind of coverage tools and competitive instincts that have the coaching staff excited about his year 2 potential. Of the 9 players in the 2025 rookie class, only their final pick, defensive lineman Tommy Akingbesote, did not end the 2025 season with the organization, ESPN. 8 of 9 rookies contributing, developing, and building towards something bigger. That is a successful draft class by any reasonable measure. Now comes 2026, and the Cowboys' Super Bowl push, the one that all of these off-season moves, all of this draft capital, all of this roster reconstruction is building toward, is the single most important topic in Dallas sports, because the window is real. The offense is elite. Under Brian Schottenheimer's first year as head coach, the offensive unit was nothing short of electric, one of the top offenses in the entire NFL in total yards and points scored, clutch points. Dak Prescott is healthy, motivated, and already thinking about 2026 as his best chance to make a statement after back-to-back seasons that ended without playoff football. CeeDee Lamb is still one of the top 3 receivers in professional football. George Pickens, on his franchise tag, is a genuine weapon that gave Prescott an absolutely devastating second option that opposing secondaries simply had no answers for. Pickens led the Cowboys in receiving yards with 1,429 and 9 touchdowns, finishing 3rd in the league in receiving yards, a performance that earned him his first Pro Bowl appearance and established him as one of the most dangerous receivers in the game. Yahoo Sports. The Cowboys will bring back all their key offensive players, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb on the franchise tag, and running back Javonte Williams on his new 3-year, $24 million extension after his career-best 1,201 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns. Yahoo Sports. The entire offensive core returns intact. The line, anchored by Booker at guard and a supporting cast of veterans and developing players, has the foundation to be better in year 2. The weapons are in place. The quarterback is at the peak of his physical capabilities. The offensive infrastructure for a championship run is genuinely there. What is not yet fully there is the defense. With new defensive coordinator Christian Parker tasked with reshaping a unit that allowed an NFL most 30.1 points per game in 2025, the second most in a season in Dallas's 66-year history, the Cowboys have made their upgrades but still have work to do through the draft and potentially additional trades. CBSSports.com. Parker is installing a new scheme. The secondary has been upgraded with Jalen Thompson, Kobe Durant, and P.J. Locke. Rashawn Gary has been added at edge. The interior defensive line remains strong with Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams, but the linebacker room is unsettled. The cornerback depth is thin, and Eziraku's hip surgery creates genuine uncertainty about whether the Cowboys' most exciting young pass rusher will be at full speed when the season begins. The Cowboys' strength of schedule for 2026 is the 13th easiest in the NFL, a favorable draw that gives Brian Schottenheimer's rebuilding defense a path to wins early in the season while the young players develop and the new system takes hold under Christian Parker, Yardbarker. The schedule could be the Cowboys' best friend in 2026, allowing the defense to grow into Parker's system against opponents who are beatable, while the elite offense carries the load in the close games. That is not a championship blueprint, but it is a viable path to the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
The Cowboys' Vice President of Player Personnel, Will McClay, said at the Senior Bowl in January, "Having the opportunity to improve the team with 2 first-round picks is going to be huge. Looking at the talent out here, and depending on where it goes, having the opportunity and the flexibility with that is good as we try to rebuild the team and add stuff to it." Dallas Cowboys, 2 first-round picks. Pick 12, the Cowboys' own selection. Pick 20, the one that came directly from the Micah Parsons trade, the pick born from the most painful roster decision Jerry Jones has made in years. 2 chances on April 23rd in Pittsburgh to add the foundational defensive players that can transform this team from a talented but incomplete roster into a genuine Super Bowl threat. It is the first time since 2008 that the Cowboys have had 2 first-round selections. Dallas Cowboys. And here is the extraordinary, almost poetic irony at the heart of all of this. The Cowboys' 2 biggest weapons in their 2026 Super Bowl push, the pick at number 20, the defensive rebuilding fund, the draft capital that makes this whole offseason possible, came directly from trading away the player who is now recovering from a torn ACL in Green Bay, who posted 12.5 sacks and 26 quarterback hits in his first Packers season before going down, who was named first-team All-Pro, who was on pace to perhaps the greatest defensive season in franchise history before his knee buckled in Denver. The Cowboys gave away Micah Parsons and got back ammunition. Whether they use that ammunition well enough to build a defense that can compete for a Super Bowl without the player who made them a championship-caliber defense for 4 straight seasons, that is the question the 2026 season will answer. Meanwhile, Parsons is in the wheat room, in the film room, working his left knee through the progression of an ACL recovery with the same obsessive intensity he brings to every other aspect of his professional life. As analysts described it, he is being an all-pro for his team off the field, even as he cannot yet be one on it, demonstrating the leadership, the accountability, and the team-first culture that made Green Bay willing to give up so much to get him in the first place. He has been seen physically working out his injured knee on the road to recovery, posting progress videos that give Packers fans visible evidence of the work being done. He is targeting a return around Week 4 of the 2026 season, and assuming he comes back healthy, Green Bay remains a Super Bowl contender. Newsweek. 2 franchises, 2 championship windows, the same generational talent at the center of both stories. Micah Parsons dominating and then recovering in Green Bay. The Cowboys rebuilding and then potentially breaking through in Dallas. The 2025 rookie class growing into the role of cornerstones, with Tyler Booker anchoring an offensive line that can run the football and protect Dak Prescott, and Donovan Eziraku hoping that his hip heals well enough to make the second-year leap that the Cowboys desperately need him to make. George Pickens on his tag, Javonte Williams running behind the big boys, CeeDee Lamb doing what CeeDee Lamb does, and Dak Prescott held
healthy, focused, motivated, trying to prove that the best years of his career are not behind him, that the wasted 2025 season was an anomaly, that the combination of offensive brilliance and a rebuilt defense can finally deliver what this franchise and its long-suffering fan base have been waiting 31 years to experience. The Super Bowl push is real. The pieces are being assembled. The draft is 3 weeks away. The Cowboys are ready. And somewhere in Green Bay, Micah Parsons is doing his knee exercises and thinking about the day he gets back on the field and shows the world that everything people thought about him, everything the Cowboys front office misunderstood, everything the trade drama obscured, everything the ACL tried to take away was never even close to the full picture of who he is and what he is capable of. The comeback is loading, the push is loading, and the most compelling chapter of this story hasn't even been written yet. This video is based on publicly available reports, official team statements, credible sports journalism, verified statistics from the 2025 NFL season, and ongoing 2026 off-season developments. All information reflects reporting available as of April 4, 2026.